Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. The talk tonight, it's about a specific topic related to the auspicious occasion of the birth anniversary of Lady Zahra salamallahu alayha. The talk is, the way that I uh, named it, is the Quranic portrait of Lady Zahra, a Shia narrative. Before I start the talk, there are few points that I have to state to clarify, so the scope of my discussion and the perspective and the lens I'm employing in presenting this topic tonight. So first of all, what we are discussing is mainly focused on a specific category of hadiths, الروايات التفسيرية, تفسيري hadiths, those reports from the Prophet or from the Imams that are in the position of explaining certain verses of Quran, certain words, certain expressions, a theme in the Quran. These are kind of the tafsiri hadiths. And our topic is a Shi'i reading of this narrative. Because in the our Sunni brothers and sisters narrative, when they approach this topic, so many of the hadiths that are being discussed in the Shia circle are not accepted in Sunni scholarship as authentic, or they have different interpretations for them. And even the title, the topic, talking about a portrait of Lady Zahra in the Quran, because there is no specific mention of the name of Lady Zahra in the Quran, may not even make sense to the mainstream Sunni scholars. So this is a Shia reading, a narrative that I'm explaining in my discourse. Although initially I was planning just to have a session just touching and listing some of the verses that the Shia scholars, Shia Mufassirun, exegetes, they use them in the Tafsir to explain different type of associations of those verses to Lady Zahra salamallahu alayha. But then I realized that just listing them would not help, may even make things more confusing for the ones who are listening to the lecture. So I thought maybe I need to go a bit more in depth to explain some of these verses. For sure, I cannot cover all of them. Maybe just one or two verses in the session tonight. But I will try to dig deeper, so to present the Shia perspective. So again, my talk is not a polemical discourse on Shia theology. There is no polemic here. And the intention is just to present the perspective, how the Shia scholars, Shia Mufassir, they approach such a topic when it comes about the portrayal of the Ahlul Bayt, and specifically Lady Zahra in our discussion. In Quran, are there verses in the Quran related to them or not, and how they should be understood? The other point that I need to highlight is that although our discussion is about Lady Zahra, however, most of the verses that we are talking includes her and her family. So her husband, Ali alayhi salam, and specifically to her two sons, Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Husayn. Most of tafsirs that I'm using in my discussions are taken from Shia Tafsir, Tafsir al-Mizan. However, the author, late Allama Tabatabai, narrates many of these hadiths from the Sunni tafsirs or Sunni collections of hadiths. So, keeping these points in mind, I'm trying to introduce the topic with explaining the need. Why the Shia scholars, Shia Mufassirun, they approach such topics? It is, one can say, at least partially, in response to a challenge presented to Shia thought. The challenge can be explained this way, that one can state, one can question, one can challenge the fundamentals of Shia doctrine, which is based on the concept of imamate and the role of the Ahlul Bayt and the family of the Prophet. And those specific people that the Shia, they call them imams, and or the Lady Zahra, who are the mother of the imams. The challenge is to say that if these people were so important, so crucial in spreading the message of Islam, in explaining the message of Islam, in understanding the message of Islam, if they are the ones divinely guided, and they are the true successors of the Prophet to continue his mission, then how it comes that there is no single mention of their names in the Quran, which is tibyanan likulli shay, which is according to Quran itself, it is the explanation of everything. So how could Quran neglect to name the Imams, so similar to the way that Quran names the prophets and names the Prophet of Islam? Why the Quran didn't mention the names of the Imam if they were so crucial and so fundamental to understand the message of Islam? So the way that Shia understand it is that not mentioning them doesn't mean that, it doesn't in any way negate the crucial role that they have in the understanding teaching of Islam. So not mentioning them could be for certain reasons, certain wisdoms. For example, some scholars, the way that explain it, the Shia narrative, the Shia understanding, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He guaranteed in His book that He is going to protect Quran from being altered, from being changed, deviated. إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا الذِّكْرَ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. There are several emphases, according to Arabic literature, in this verse, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we are going to protect. Indeed, with no doubt, you are going to protect this book. We are the ones who revealed it, and we are the one who are going to protect it. However, the Quran has been revealed, Shia scholars, they argue, in a way that it's at the same time, it is tibyanan likulli shay. It explains everything that is needed for the salvation of mankind, without having a tone and a kind of the expressions or a way of implementing, a way of explaining the teachings that would not leave any choice for its opponents but to alter it. In other ways, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Shia scholars understand, He made Quran in a way that it explains everything. However, it doesn't give enough motivation to its opponents to alter it. to protect themselves, to alter it, to change certain meanings. So, in other words, the Quran was not meant to be protected by a kind of magical divine power. Someone wants to alter it, then a light strikes him down. No. The divine wisdom has been implemented in the Quran in a way that it is not so straightforward for its opponents or for the ones who have any problem, some of the main teaching of Islam, that they see no choice but to change it. At the same time, Quran has its own style of ensuring that all the messages are delivered with no doubt. That's um, one way of understanding it. So this perspective in Shia scholarship comes, for example, from certain hadiths of the Imams. So, for example, we have in a hadith from Abi Basir and Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, and he narrates the hadith from. So the discussion is about the one of the verses of Quran. So someone says to Imam al-Baqir, إن الناس يقولون لنا فما منعه أن يسمى عليا وأهل بيته في كتابه. The same question. So it was a kind of challenge that was even present at the time of the Shia Imams. So someone asked, people say to us, what prevented Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from naming Ali and his family in his book? Then Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam responded. He said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he revealed Quran on the Prophet and he commanded to do prayers. However, he never mentioned in the Quran how many units one should pray, 3, 4, 2, and when. He revealed on the Prophet to do Hajj, pilgrimage, but he never mentioned that you need, for example, to do 7 tawaf, circling around the Kaaba, the house of God. And the Imam explained that because these explanations have been left to the Prophet, because he was the mufassir, he was the one who was responsible for interpreting the teachings of Quran. And then Imam mentions certain verses of Quran, like the verse Ati Allah wa Ati Rasul wa ulil amr minkum, obey Allah and obey the messenger and those in authority among you. And then Imam says that according to the Prophet, according to the hadith said we have, it's about Ali, it's about Hasan, it's about Husayn. These are the ulul amr. So this is an example to understand how the Shia scholars they address this challenge, why the name of the Imam were not mentioned. So the same reason that many other teachings, the details were not mentioned in the Quran and were left to the Prophet. And the Shia believe that Prophet left enough evidence for the Muslims to understand, for example, to associate some of the verses of Quran to Ahlul Bayt and to understand their roles. So that's just the overall perspective that one can find when one looks at the Tafsiri works of the Shia scholars and the explanations. I would say there are 3 categories of hadiths that one can see. So in the Shia scholarship, Shia Tafsir, there are these 3 categories of hadiths. They are associated with Lady Zahra Salamullah alayha and her family. The main category is the category of those tafsiri hadiths that they claim that certain verses of Quran are exclusively about Lady Zahra and her family, about Lady Zahra, Ali ibn Abi Talib and her 2 sons and the Prophet, peace be upon him. And these verses, according to these hadiths, do not apply to anyone else. This category, which is the most important category in Shia thought for the link making, so making connection and link between Quran and Hadith, and the role of the Imamate and the Ahlul Bayt in the Quran. They also can be divided into two different types. Those hadiths that are claiming that certain verses are exclusively addressed to the family of the Prophet, and these are the hadiths that have been reported about the occasion of revelation of certain verses. Why certain verses have been revealed. There are hadiths that explain that these have been revealed exclusively in relation to the family of the Prophet, in relation to Lady Zahra, in relation to Amir al-Mu'minin, in relation to the whole family of the Prophet, including Prophet and her daughter, her son-in-law, and his grandchildren. There are other type of hadiths that also, although they also claim exclusive uh, uh, application of some verses to the Ahlul Bayt, the family of the Prophet, specifically to Lady Zahra, her husband and two sons, but they are not related to occasion of revelation of certain verses. They are certain, they have different nature and different form of knowledge. The second main category, so beside the category that are those hadiths in the Shia sources, or the ones from the both Shia and Sunni sources that Shia understand them to designate some verses of Quran to exclusively apply to Ahlul Bayt. There are another category that there are hadiths that associate them with the Ahlul Bayt, but not exclusively. Rather, this type of hadiths, the second category of hadiths, they say, this verse applies to Lady Zahra, applies to Ali alayhi salam, for example. However, it's more um, as a prime example, as the most complete example. But the verse can apply to the others as well, but in different levels. So the claim is that, for example, if you want to talk about Sadiqeen, Siddiqeen, some of the concepts of the Quran, there might be a hadith associating the verse, says that it means Ali, but not in a sense that it doesn't apply to the others. But Ali is the most complete example of the verse, the highest level that can be applied, for example, of the meaning of Siddiqeen, for example. And there are the third category of hadiths that I would call them ta'bili category, ta'bili hadiths, that they refer to certain verses of Quran, and they say it's about Ahlul Bayt, it's about Lady Zahra, it's about Ali alayhi salam, but they do not rely on the literal meaning of the word, it's kind of interpretation of the word. What they claim cannot be ascribed to the literal and apparent meaning of the verse. Rather, it's kind of more esoteric kind of meaning, botany meaning, a different level of meaning that these hadiths they talk about. So my discussion tonight is about the first category primarily. And in the first category, which is those hadiths that claim that certain verses are exclusively revealed in association with the Lady Zahra and her family. And among them, as I mentioned, the first type is the types that they're talking about the occasion of revelation, Sha'nu Nuzul. Let us to discuss two of these verses tonight, inshallah, if I can cover them. So this type of hadith is very important in Shia tafsir, in Shia theology, because these hadiths, they combine two main elements of the uh, authentic sources of Islamic thought. They combine Quran and hadith together. They have a historical background to them. So there's also historical evidence that support them. And in many cases, these hadiths, because they are hadiths about the occasion of revelation, they can be found in both Sunni and Shia collections of hadiths. And that's why these hadiths can be used by, for example, the Shia Mufassirun in a polemical sense as well, to argue that this should be also authoritative for the Sunni scholars because of the hadith being mentioned in their sources as well. So one of the example is the verse that's called about the matter of Mubahala. It's chapter al-Imran, verse 61. فَمَنْ حَجَّكَ فِيهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَكَ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ. Should anyone argue with you concerning him, concerning Isa alayhi salam, after the knowledge that he has come to, that has come to you, فَقُلْ تَعَالَوْا نَدْعُ أَبْنَاءَنَا وَأَبْنَاءَكُمْ. Say, come, let us call our sons and your sons. وَنِسَاءَنَا وَنِسَاءَكُمْ. Our women and your women. وَأَنفُسَنَا وَأَنفُسَكُمْ. Our souls and your souls. ثُمَّ نَبْتَهِلْ. Then let us pray earnestly. فَنَجْعَلْ لَعْنَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْكَاذِبِينَ. And call down Allah's curse upon the liars. So, what was the historical anecdote for revelation of this verse? As it has been mentioned in both Sunni and Shia sources, for example, in Tafsir al-Tha'labi, one of the tafsir of Ahlul Sunnah, so it's narrated from Mujahid and from Kalbi, that so it was the challenge. So some of the Christian elites, they denied the message of Quran and the teaching of the Prophet about Isa alayhi salam. And then the challenge came to this point that the Prophet says that if you are still going to deny me, so there is one way. So you bring your woman, your sons, you come, and I do the same. I come, I bring my woman, my sons, أنفسنا وأنفسكم, our soul, your soul. And then we ask Allah to curse the one who is a liar. If you are still going to deny me and you claim that you don't know about this. So the hadith says, فأتوا رسول الله وقد غضى محتدنا بالحسين آخذا بيد الحسن وفاطمة تمشي خلفه وعلى خلفها وهو يقول إذا أنا دعوت فأمنوا. So the hadith says that then it was the Prophet came, so it's called the time of the Mubahala. The Prophet came and he had come out carrying al-Husayn and holding the hand of al-Hassan, and Fatima was walking behind him, and Ali was behind her. وَعَلِيٌّ خَلْفَهَا. Then the Prophet told them, when I supplicate, when I pray, say Amen. Amen. So to ask Allah to answer the du'as. Then the hadith says that the priest, a Christian priest from Najran who was there. فقال أسقف نجران يا معشر النصارى إني لأرى وجوها. He said, the bishop of the Najran then said, O assembly of Christians, I truly see faces. أرى وجوها لو سألوا الله أن يزيل جبلا من مكانه. If they were to ask Allah to remove a mountain from its place, لأزاله بها فلا تباهلوا فتهلكوا. So if they ask Allah to remove a mountain from its place, He would surely remove it for them, for their sake. So do not engage in the mubahala, a mutual imprecation, lest you perish. If you do that, you will be doomed. So this is the hadith that Tha'labi mentions it in his tafsir from Mujahid and Kalbi. And you see that the hadith explicitly names the people with whom the Prophet participated in Mubahala. Ali, Lady Zahra, and Al-Hasan wal Husayn. And the author of al-Mizan, he says that the same story, close to it, so different version. You see that Al-Waqidi, he mentions it in his book Al-Maghazi from Ibn Ishaq, and Al-Maliki in his Al-Fusul al-Muhamma, and many of the Mufassirin as well, and also Abu Na'im al-Isbahani in Hilyatul Awliya. So he in different chain of narrators from Jabir, so on and so forth. For example, the one that the Abu Na'im mentions in his book from Jabir, so explicitly says, so the part of and the Jabir narrates, he said that when they came for the Mubahala, فغدا رسول الله وأخذ بيد علي والحسن والحسين وفاطمة. So it says when became the morning, the Prophet came and he took the hands of the Ali and Hassan and Hussein and Fatima. Again, Tabatabai adds that the same hadith has been narrated and, by many Sunni scholars in their books. Then Tabatabai goes further, mentioning the quote of Sayyid ibn Tawus, one of the most prominent early Shia scholars, in his book Sa'd al-Su'ud, that he says that I saw in one of the books, this is by the book called ما نزل من القرآن في النبي وأهل بيته, which is a book written by Muhammad ibn al-Abbas ibn Marwan, that he claims that the story of Mubahala has been narrated from 51 different chains of narrators. So among the main narrators of the hadith, these hadiths are Uthman ibn Affan, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, Talha, Zubayr, Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, Abdullah ibn Abbas, and Rafi, the servant of the Prophet, and Jabir ibn Abdullah Ansari, and Anas ibn Malik. So all recognized prominent figures in early Islam and acknowledged by Sunni scholars for their reputation. And also, what seems to be clear from the hadiths and also some other reports that we have at hand seems to be that the early companions of the Prophet saw the incident of Mubahala as a unique honor for the Ali alayhi salam, Lady Zahra salamullah alayha, and Al-Hasan wal Husayn, Imamain al-Hasan wal Husayn. For example, this is in Sahih Muslim that Amr, he narrates from Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, and his father. Sorry, it's Amr ibn Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. He narrates from his father, who is Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. So he says that Muawiyah commanded Sa'd, and he asks Sa'd, ما يمنعك أن تسب أبا تراب. This is in Sahih Muslim. So what prevents you from cursing Ali? And then Sa'd answers. He says that قال أما ما ذكرت ثلاثا قالهن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم فلن أسبه. He says, because I heard three things that the Prophet said about Ali, and because of them I will never curse Ali. لأن يكون لي واحدة منهن أحب إلي من حمر النعم. Says that to possess even one of them would be more beloved to me than the red camels, which was a very most precious wealth at the time. So just I wish I could just have one of them. So he lists those three occasions that the Prophet says something about Ali alayhi salam. And one of them is the incident of Mubahala. ولما نزلت هذه الآية فقل تعالوا ندعو أبناءنا وأبناءكم ونساءنا ونساءكم وأنفسنا وأنفسكم ثم نبتهل فنجعل لعنة الله على الكاذبين. دعا رسول الله عليا وفاطمة وحسنا وحسينا. The Prophet asked only these four to join him. And then he says, قال اللهم هؤلاء أهل بيتي. Oh Allah, these are my family. These are Ahlul Bayt. And then later Allah says that this hadith, not only in the Sahih Bukhari, but also is Tirmidhi, he narrates it in his Sahih, and also many other scholars, they narrate the same hadith. And it shows again that the incident of Mubahala was understood by the companions of the Prophet as an honor. So a dignified status for Amir al-Mu'minin and Lady Zahra sallallahu alayhi specifically, which is because of her we have this discussion tonight. And this is interesting that al-Mizan, the author of al-Mizan, he mentions from the author of Kashaf, Tafsir al-Kashaf by Zamakhshari. And Zamakhshari is one of the most prominent and established scholars in among our brothers and sisters in Sunnah. So he says that when he interprets the verse, says that وَفِيهِ دَلِيلٌ لا شيء أقوى منه على فضل أصحاب الكساء. And there is a proof in this hadith. So the hadith says about the Mubahala, that there is no proof stronger than this hadith on the priority and on the fadl of the people of Kisa, Ashab al-Kisa, meaning Ahlul Bayt. So I will later explain the hadith about Ashab al-Kisa, the people who were specifically Amir al-Mu'minin, Lady Zahra, Imam al-Husayn, Imam al-Hasan, Imam al-Husayn, and the Prophet, peace be upon them. So Zamakhshari says there is no stronger proof for the elevated status than this verse about Mubahala. And then it continues أفيه برهان واضح على صحة نبوة النبي لأنه لم يروي أحد من موافق ولا مخالف أنهم أجابوا إلى ذلك. So because the challenge was so powerful that so the Christian elites, they didn't dare to accept the challenge. Then, this is very interesting. What Date al-Mutabawi says about the meaning of the verse. It says that when we are talking about participation of Lady Zahra, of Amir al-Mu'minin, of Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Husayn in Mubahala, it is not just merely their presence, that they were present there, and the kind of the debate was between the Prophet and the ones who challenged the truth of his claim. So let Allah Mutawawi explain that if it's very important to understand that the ones who are participating in Mubahala are only the ones who are part of the claims. Because you do not just bring a random person saying, just come with me, so we are going to do a Mubahala, we may die. Or for example, this is something that you just curse the other side, they curse us, and part of us, one of us would be failed and we were doomed. Only the people who have a strong claim in it, who are participating in that claim, only the main players, the people who are representative of that claim, they participate in Mubahala, not the people otherwise. So he explained وهذا يعطي أن يكون الحاضرون للمباحلة شركاء في الدعوة, because it says that when the verse is talking that فالكلام يدل على تحقق الكاذبين بوصف الجمع في أحد طرفي المحاجبة المباحلة, because the verse is talking in plural sense. So لعنة الله على الكاذبين, that whatever side is wrong, is lying, the verse considers all of them as liars. So it means that all of the ones who have been participated as one side of the Mubahala are representative of the claim of that side. So he concludes that this means that Lady Zahra and Ali alayhi salam and Hasan and Husayn, they were participating as representative of the same claim that Prophet was representing then. So they were representative of the claim and the mission of the prophethood. This is very interesting. So point of view from Tabatabai, the way that he explains it. I'm not sure if I did justice to his interpretation. So he concludes that the verse of Mubahala proves a very elevated status for the ones who participated in Mubahala with the Prophet. And this understanding can be supported by what I just mentioned, that the words of Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, in which he says that I wish I was given everything, I had all the wealth, and I could have this verse or one of the two other instances about me. I hope that I wish that I was included in this verse. Why this should be such a wish, with such a far-fetched honor? Because it might be, as what later Allah explains, because the ones who were participants in the Mubahala, first they were the ones addressed by the Prophet as his family. He said explicitly, they are my family, Ahlul Bayt. And also because their presence means that they were considered as representative of the prophetic claim. This is a very elevated status for Lady Zahra, Ali alayhi salam, and their two sons. So then later Allah Ta'ala engages in some theological and also tafsir debates with some scholars, Sunni scholars, who negated some of these implications of the uh, uh, verse about Mubahala. So some said, for example, it was only so the meaning is more general, although the prophet came with them, but it applies to everyone. It's just so it says that about the who because it talks about nisa'ana wa nisa'akum wa abna'ana wa abna'akum. It applies to all the women, all the men, although in that instance, in this instance, the prophet came with his family, but it doesn't mean that it was restricted to them. Or there are some others who claim that it was only the prophet who was the side, the one side of the Mubahala, and not his family, although he brought them, but it was just to show how sincere he is. But they were not included in the claim of Mubahala. So Tabatabai here engages in a debate with them to explain. So from a Quranic perspective, that's so how he understands it differently, and how the correct understanding is what he explains. Then he mentions specifically, he criticizes the arguments by Rashid Rida, who in his Tafsir al-Manar, he mentions from his teacher, Muhammad Abduh. And so he offers a different perspective, and specifically, Rashid Rida says something that says that these kind of words and this kind of expressions, these are the type of هذه الروايات روايات الشيعة مصادر هذه الروايات الشيعة ومقصدهم منها معروف. So the sources of these riwayat, the hadiths, are Shia, and their intent and their goal is clear, what they want to do with them. And then Tabatabai engages in a discussion with him, saying that which part of these hadiths are from the Shia, your sources, your scholars, or the meaning, so on and so forth. And says, that just shows the argument is just baseless. It's just out of being biased. These hadiths that is from more than 50 sources cannot be just merely downplayed to Shia hadiths. This is something that has been established in the Islamic literature. So the verse of Mubahala, from this perspective, Shay explained how late Allama Tabatabai in his al-Mizan, he approaches the verse to show that this verse is an undeniable proof on the elevated status of the people who participated in it, because it is not just merely a matter of participation in an event. The participation in Mubahala only, and then the verse of Quran considering one part of the claim as al-Kadhibin in plural, means that everyone who was included in one side was considered a representative of that claim. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense for the Prophet says that we curse all of them, all the other group. And it says that then we can see from the way that the verse of Quran is talking about, from the, also you can see from the way that the companions of the Prophet, they understood the verse, that this verse talks about these specific people being part of the prophetic mission. being considered part of the claim of the Prophet. So they are representative of the teachings of the Prophet. They are representative of the mission of the Prophet. So this is a very unique status that applies to Lady Zahra and her family. The second verse, which as I see we are running out of time and I will not be able to discuss it, but just to touch upon it, maybe in another occasion, inshallah, I will discuss it because this is the most important verse in this category, the category of the tafsiri hadiths relevant to an occasion of revelation of a verse that Shia, they understand them to prove certain points, to prove certain attributes, characteristics for the Ahlul Bayt, for the family of the Prophet. This is the most important one. The verse, this is called Ayatul Tathir. For the Shia, it's called the verse of Tathir, verse of purification. And this is in chapter Ahzab. So the verse, this part of the specific part of it, the last part of the verse says, إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. Indeed, Allah desires to repel all impurity from you, O people of the household, and purify you with a thorough purification. So later Tabatabai, in his understanding of this verse, the Shi'i reading of this verse, so he says that this verse started with, so this part of it started with the word إنما. And it says that كلمة إنما تدل على حصر الإرادة. So he says that this the word إنما here, only, verily, indicates the confinement of the divine will. حصر الإرادة في إذهاب الرجس والتطهير. The confinement of divine will to the removal of impurity and to purify these people. Then he says that, and then we have the word Ahlul Bayt here, and you see another exclusion here. And this is the exclusion of the people who are going to be purified. So the verse, the way that later Allah explains, there is double lock in the verse. First lock is that Allah says, I'm intending to do something, and it's not just merely anything. I intend to remove any uncleanness, impurity, and to purify. This is my intention. And the second lock, the double lock, the second lock is that my intention, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, is solely, exclusively for certain group who are called Ahlul Bayt. So the verse talks about purification, and as I will discuss it inshallah in maybe another chance, from the Shia perspective, this purification is not a kind of purification that one reaches by obeying Allah's orders, not committing sins, and obeying divine commands. The verse is talking about a purification by God, mutahharun, not the one who are mutatahhirin, the ones who are tahir, the ones who are striving to be pure. But we are talking about mutahharun, the ones who have been purified by Allah. So it's a different sense, which for, as Tabatabai he experienced in his tafsir, there are a lot of implications for the people who are included in this term Ahlul Bayt. This purification, which is divine purification, can show not only the status of ismah for them, infallibility, but also can prove that they are the most noble people among the whole human race before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as I will explain inshallah in another session. And also these are the people al-mutahharun who have access to the essence of the Quran in Lahul Mahfuz. La yamassuhu illa al-mutahharun. No one touches it but the people who are purified, mutahharun. Inshallah, that's I leave the detail of this discussion, inshallah, to another session. Just to wrap up the points I mentioned. So again, there were some preliminary points I highlighted. The purpose of this discussion is just to explain a Shia narrative of some of the verses of Quran, how they understand it to be associated with Lady Zahra and her family. We explained this in this session. We explained one of the verses, Verse of Mubahala, and how it is understood in Shia circle beyond just a matter of simple participation in an event. Rather, the participation in Mubahala, the Lady Zahra's participation in Mubahala, shows that she has been considered part of the prophetic claim, a representative of prophetic claim, a unique status that many companions of the prophet just wished for it. And second, just touched about it, the verse of Tathir, which from the Shia perspective understood in a sense of divine purification, divinely directed purification, not a human strive purification. And what are the implications for the divine driven purification? I mentioned the case of the infallibility, the case of the having access to true essence of the Quran. لا يمسه إلا المطهرون. But inshallah, I will discuss it further in another session. But this is enough just to elaborate on Lady Zahra as someone who, from a Shia perspective, he has an elevated status that the verse of Quran can be taken as evidence for that. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the blessing and insight to benefit and to understand better the divine instruction, the divine knowledge, and to use it for purification of our heart and for improving and developing in our spiritual journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We recite a salawat.